Okay, y'all, so here we are doing the Washington DCA Reagan, doing the Freedom 5 arrival, descending via at the moment here, Rnav Rnp runway 19. Let's look at a few things. Specifically, one thing that I want to look at here is this arrival procedure itself. What we're doing is a descend via. We got the 19 transition in, so we started at Bucko here at above. We were above 310, descending via down. We put 8,000 here as our bottom altitude, and if you could read this 19, it says you're going to track to Fergie. Actually, let's back up here from Always on a track to 122 to Freedom. So Always is our branch point here to head out this direction. And then Freedom at speed 248,000 stand together. Fergie, which then it says expect LDA DME 19 Rnav Rnp 19 River Visual 19 or radar vectors to final approach course. Of course, we're going to use the Rnav Rnp 19 in lieu of the River Visual for 19. I think just about everybody goes into DCA from landing south does this. Specifically because of the Potomac and the prohibited area here, P56, on your way into DCA. Everybody, I think, knows about that by now. I want to read this couple things off the SIP page to you here for the Reagan Airport arrivals, and specifically what it says here. Arrival. Runway 19, sea safety alert, river visual. It is one of our special airports. On initial contact with TRACON, request the Rnav Rnp runway 19. The Rnp approach provides improved operational efficiency and a predictable lateral vertical path, which will assist in remaining clear of prohibited area P56. The Rnav Rnp runway 19 provides the same lateral and vertical path as the river visual 19. So with that statement there and policy, there's really no reason to be accepting or taking the Rnav visual to the airport. And if we pop over here, we can actually look and take a look here. The river visual 19 and what that looks like. I'm going to pause this again here so I don't make too much forward progress. So you can look and see river visual 19. Requires 3,500 foot ceiling, 3 miles of visibility. There is no missed approach procedure because it's a visual procedure. If you were to do a go around, you'd have to just get instructions from the tower. River visual 19, aircraft may visually follow the river to the airport or may proceed via the Rnav Rnp runway 19 approach to CTOC waypoint and then follow the river to the airport. So here's CTOC and follow the river to your destination. So what's probably the better way to do, and what we just read, was to instead want to select the Rnav Rnp runway 19. And so here it is. You can see it looks almost exactly the same. Goes over Fergie, Derrick, all the way down, and here's our a CTOC intersection. It adds a few more intersections in there. Here's your profile view. Of course, it's got PAPI on the left side for visual guidance once you make that turn in. Over FIROP on in, and just like the river visual, you can see how it follows the river to stay clear of the prohibited area. So we've got it's an Rnav approach, course 187, which is just the final heading there between FIROP and the runway, touching down at 13 feet touchtone sound elevation. Now if you were doing an actual Rnav approach, it'd be 491 feet would be your decision altitude, which would put you 478 feet above the ground. This one does have a missed approach procedure because it is an actual instrument procedure. So climb to 3,000 on the final approach track to runway 19, then direct to Baden and hold, which is down here in this little box, and continue climb and hold to 3,000 feet. Same PAPI off the left side there, that just like the visual. So that's why we just essentially use this one instead. I do want to look at and talk about briefly because there was a question about the Mount Vernon Visual 1. So let's take a look at this real quick. Weather minimums 3,000 foot ceiling, 4 miles of visibility, PAPI off the right side, and we can talk about this a little bit more here. So again, a visual approach. There's no missed approach procedure. If you did have to go missed approach, you'd probably just want to turn and fly up the river here. We'll show the actual missed approach for the Rnav Rnp runway 1 here momentarily. I'm I'm not going to do a separate video for this because it's not that complicated. Your biggest concern would be if you did have to do a go around. So, you know, you got these fixes here, Katrin and Baden. Those are going to be in your FMS, your FMC. It's going to be fixes that you can fly over. Or, you know, you've got the ILS-DME here. You can fly that in, tune that in, fly that in. And, of course, when you get to Baden, which is also 5.9 DME off the DCA VOR, 111.0 here for the DCA VOR, you know, that identifies Baden, which all you really need to do, you're in visual conditions again because 3004. All you really need to do is make a left-hand turn back to the right, fly over the bridge, reestablish yourself visually using the PAPI, and just fly a visual landing. So this is really the only big thing here. This little jut over here to the left and back to the right. There's a hospital down here on the ground, I think is what it is. They don't want you flying over for noise. Compare that now to the RNP runway 1, and you can see obviously it's a different procedure. You're not going to do the cut because, you know, you're not in visual conditions, so in this case you're not worried about it. And you can see what the missed approach would be in this case. Climb to 2200 feet, left turn to 5 wood, then on a track of 327, and they're going to keep you west of the river to stay away from P56. One thing to note that I did miss here, let's go back now that we're done talking about runway 1. Let's go back to our Rnav Rnp runway 1. Let's look at this again real quick. River visual rather. And you will notice that it does say clearance for visual approach does not authorize penetration of prohibited area P56. So keep that in mind. You're still responsible for maintaining clearance from the prohibited areas here. And so there's a few ways that we can do that. And let's get back into the game itself here. And we'll start flying this thing. And so we are in our descent via. And of course those points along the FMC here shows now September 11th at or above 10, always at or below 10. Freedom at 8. That's the bottom of our arrival. However, we are going to have to set something lower here. We don't want to just level off at 8. We need to keep on going down, and approach would clear you for the approach at some point here. And so then we've got Fergie, just like we saw off the chart, 210 at or above 3. And then we got Derek Gray, Seatalk, Fonvi, Jubal, and we're Sophia up in the runway. So in the fixed page, I did my typical runway 19 with my 10-mile ring, and on the next page PLVIA, which is essentially the fix for the P56 prohibited area with a 1-mile ring. And if we do a plan view, we'll rotate that knob to the right, zoom in a bit. On the legs page, we can step through all these fixes, and if we get far enough down here, you can see there's P56 with a 1-mile ring around it. So just like when you take off, you know, you got to take off and fly out here to the northwest. You're going to do the reverse coming in. You're going to avoid and stay west of P56 on the way in as well. So again, great essay drawing that circle there, and keeps you out of trouble. There's Washington Dulles there that we're going to pass over on the arrival. So here we are. We're going down to now, it's going to want us to slow Freedom 240 at 8,000. Let's do a couple checklists. We've been talking a lot as we've been descending here. Our descent checklist, minimums are set 13 feet. VREF and V target. It's a 7,169 foot long runway. You can do flaps 30 here just fine. 130, 135 set noted. Auto brake 2. Recall check. Descent checklist complete. Approach altimeters 2986 set. PAX auto. Start switches left continuous. And our approach checklist is complete. Unlike an ILS, an RNAV approach will essentially control the speeds for you. You're going to be in LNAV, VNAV path, and you won't have to use the speeds or the speed wheel I should say here, with the window open at the speed knob to reduce your speeds on your approach like you would an ILS. As you select flaps, you'll notice, and you'll be able to watch, the speed bug will drop to the flap settings as I select flaps. So the RNAVs are incredibly useful in that regard. So here we go. I've got 3,000 in there so that we don't end up high at Fergie. You got to keep in mind, you always got to be setting a lower altitude in the MCP, or the airplane will leave you high. So once you've been cleared for this approach, you could actually set something even lower than Fergie, because Fergie is part of the approach. I don't need to set 3. Let's look down a little further. In fact, here's our runway. Now let's go up. And our first hard altitude, big number here, is 1500 at CTOC. That's our final approach fix. So if we're cleared the approach, let's set 1500 here. And our parameters for setting zeros on the MCP window, altitude window, will be on a published portion of the approach, which would be Fergie inbound, LNAV, VNAV path, and cleared approach. When all 3 of those conditions are satisfied, we can zero this out. So essentially, once we turn in past Fergie, as long as we're still on that VNAV path, cleared the approach, we'll set zeros. And then that's just on to us to configure all the way down and in. So we'll keep an eye on this and make sure. At this point, we got 2 major things to keep in mind. 1, we stay on path. 3 things really. We stay out of P56, and we configure on time. Now, this RNAV is also really great because it's going to have me at 210 knots at Fergie. So by my 10-mile ring in VNAV on the path, I should be at 210 knots. In fact, you can see the decel point right there. So we shouldn't have too many issues in terms of slowing down and getting configured. I like to be no faster than 210 and go flaps 5 here at 10 and then set speed. So if I say flaps 5 set speed, I would go flaps 5 and then bug the 5 speed. You can ask your co-pilot to do that too, so that it takes the workload away from you, allows you to just concentrate on flying. So again, Fergie was the final approach, final fix for the arrival, and the initial approach fix for the Rnav runway 19. So we're going to cross that decel point here, watch the speed start coming down. We do have 187 set in the course. I'm going to go ahead and set 187 in the heading bug, just because that's going to be my final heading between the final Rnav fix and the runway itself, and I don't want to have to be looking at anything else. Start to slow down here, LNAV VNAV path. Let's go ahead and go flaps 1, maybe a couple miles before that 10-mile ring. Just get some leading edge devices out there. That helps with the drag a lot. And we're looking like we're going to be a little fast at Fergie at the moment. It even says drag required. So I'm going to go ahead and use the speed brakes, get the flaps out. Now, I don't have to be at 180 knots. If that's not fast enough for me, I can open up the window. Let's keep it at 210, and that'll help the airplane come down too, since it's trying to slow down and go down. I got 1,500 feet there, so it's not going to level at 3,000 at Fergie. Okay, cleared approach on a published segment of the approach, LNAV VNAV path, zeros set. Now I don't have to worry about the aircraft trying to level off at any intermediate fix on the way down. We'll close the window now that we've got speed here. Let's go flaps 5 and watch that bug drop down to the flaps 5 bug speed of about 158 as the flaps roll. Let's keep our SA going. Let's zoom in. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Drag required. I'm not too worried about this at this point. I've got nice speed. I've got flaps 15 speed already should I need landing gear. My next window, I'm looking for about 2,000 feet AGL, so at 2013, I'm going to go landing gear down, flaps 15. I'm happy with the speed, somewhere between 170 and 180. FMC in VNAV path is going to respect all these altitudes. Grays at 200 knots, at or above 1,700 feet. It's right on path. It's not going to bust 1,700 feet. Here's PLVIA, the 1 mile circle. Let's go and bring the speed brakes in, but let's also arm the speed brakes. All right, little late on this. Landing gear down, flaps 15, but we got good speed. We're not going to have any problems slowing down at this point. Flaps 30, speed is 165. We pretty much got that. Let's go flaps 30 before landing checklist. Speed brake, armed, green light, landing gear down, 3 green, and flaps. .30 green light before landing checklist is complete. Tower has cleared us to land. Let's light it up. And you can see the Washington Mall out here. Now we're just flying these waypoints, and you can see we're going to stay over or west of the Potomac to avoid getting ourselves in a whole lot of trouble by flying over there. You can see it's taking a little jog to the right for Jubal. There's 1,000 feet, airspeed 140, sync rate 950. Let's get rid of this. We're not using that anyway. It's detecting something. I don't know what. Looking good. We were stabilized at 1,000 feet, fully configured on speed. Cleared to land. Checklists are complete. Now we're just flying the airplane. You'll watch us make this right turn over the bridge here to land, and we'll take over at some point. Again, that's what you're trying to avoid, right over there. Alright, auto throttle's away, 500. Autopilot is away. We'll just keep the turn coming around here. On speed, on the Pappy. Peek inside, check that VNAV path. Make sure that you're not high, not low. They're not coincident. You've heard that before, I'm sure. A little overshoot. Keep it coming back. A little low.
100.
We're going to be just fine.
50. 30. 10.
Idle power. Touchdown extended. Deployed. No rudder pedals for me, just a twisty stick. Auto brake disarm. 60 knots out of reverse. Never turn onto a runway without permission. We'll take the next taxiway and hold short. So that's it. Watch out for P56. Stay on that track. And landing south is a lot harder than it is landing north. Taking off north is a lot harder than it is taking off south. Clear the bar, flaps up, and we'll hold short of this runway and contact ground. Set the brake. Now what else can I tell you about that? I think that's about all I can really say. Just keep an eye on your path, and also try not to get behind in your configuration sequence. You know, if you start getting behind, you have some options. Throw the landing gear early. You don't have to wait till 2,000 feet AGL. I was late on that. Still managed to work out. Just make sure you configure on speed at the first available moment at that point so that you don't end up getting fast down the line. And not too much more I can say about that. Hope that helps.